sound. It's everywhere. You might not notice it at first, especially if it's done well. But if you remove it, it feels empty. In today's video, I want to dive a little deeper into sound design with the help of today's video sponsor, ARYEH. I just want to emphasize that I'm by no means a professional. Everything I know, I've learned through trial and error, YouTube tutorials, and just reading and learning. I want to emphasize this because I think a big part of the process is learning to have a good feel for it, knowing when to add, what to add, when not to add, and layering sounds tastefully. I might not be the best technically, but hopefully after watching this video, you see that that's not the most important thing. See, 9 out of 10 times, having a good feel for things or just having good taste will beat technical ability. Before we can sound design, we need something to sound design. Now, this can be anything from a video montage to an animation. You can head to my Patreon at patreon.com/Mapal to get access to the video montage we're going to be working with today, which also happens to be the one that you saw in the beginning of the video. If not, feel free to watch along, absorb the process, and try it on some of your own stuff. With that in place, we face problema numero uno, which is what sounds to get and where to get them. And that's where today's video sponsor, ARYEH, comes into play. I've gotten legitimately all my sound effects and music from ARYEH since 2022 when I started my freelance career. The reason why I picked ARYEH to begin with was because of their licensing and the different plans they have. It's easy, it's affordable, and they legit have everything you could ever need, from songs and sound effects to stock footage, templates, AI voiceover, and now even LUTs as well. And to make all that easier, they have an AI-powered search engine, which just makes it so incredibly easy finding exactly what you need for your project. One thing I'm super excited about that they've recently added is stems. Sometimes you come across a track that is almost perfect. There's the right piano, but just a little bit too much synth. And that's where stems comes into play. It gives you full control. In addition to that, I love the artboard feature that they have. Think of it as a folder where you can collect your favorite things from ARYEH. I have a folder with all my most used sound effects, which you can access through the link in the description below. All that is just to say that I highly recommend ARYEH. That is what I use all the time and also what we're going to be using in today's tutorial. Now you can go to the link in the description and you can actually get 2 months free when you sign up for the annual subscription, which is a fantastic deal. At this point, you should already have ARYEH pulled up, ready to search for whatever sounds we need. But this is where it gets a little bit tedious because we don't really know what we need yet. My process always starts in Davinci Resolve, where I currently have my timeline laid out. Now you can do this in Premiere Pro or any other video editor as well, although I do not recommend doing this in After Effects. That would be the absolute worst. Here I have all my clips lined out, and again, you can get them at patreon.com/Mapal if you want to follow along exactly how I'm doing it and get access to this little project file. And I like to make some mental notes about what kind of sounds that I want while I'm watching it through on the first playthrough. You're probably thinking, dude, that's why I'm here. I don't know what or how to pick, but worry not, young soldier. Here's my approach. We can call it the Laoke approach, which roughly translates to the layer cake approach. First, we have the atmospheric sounds. Think of these as the type of sounds that establish the feel of the piece. Think sound of leaves blowing in the wind when you're standing around trees, water splashing when you're standing at a cliff, cars driving when you're standing by a busy road. The atmospheric sounds are there to add context clues to what you're seeing on the screen. They often help make you feel more immersed in the piece. The second layer are detail sounds, which are often something that you can see on the screen. Think of a pen clicking or typing on a keyboard, maybe sipping some water. All those are detail sounds. And again, they are little sounds that help give some context to what you're seeing on the screen. At the very top of the layer cake on our third level is where it starts getting fun. This is where we get into the realm of creativity in terms of the type of sounds that we're going to be using. In this category, I'm mostly referring to whooshes, rises, impacts, clicks, and all that type of stuff that can really help convey movement. And these are not typically sounds that you necessarily hear in the real world, but when used correctly, they serve a major part in making a piece, in terms of sound design, feel super immersive and thick. You'll typically use these type of sounds to set the pace of the piece. I place the most importance on the first 2 types of sounds since it can really ground the piece. If we have that as a baseline, we're off to a pretty good start. Most important thing here is to keep it simple and natural. We want balance, but that doesn't mean I start with those type of sounds. I often find myself starting with the detail sounds since it's the most unnatural part of it. It can be super easy to overdo it and then it just starts sounding muddy and amateurish, so we really want to dial it back in this stage. During this process, I like to stick with the less is more approach. Not every transition needs a whoosh sound. It's also a good idea to keep variation in mind. Like a good diet, you don't want to have too much of the same thing. Now, if you take this the wrong way, you might think I'm contradicting myself. We want less is more, but also variation. Now, both things can be true. We just have to be very careful about how we do it. And often it can really help stacking sounds, which again sounds a little bit contradictory, but it really can add a lot of depth if you have 2 different types of whooshes to create a whole new type of whoosh. But we'll get more into that in the tutorial bit itself. Most important thing I want you to take away from this is to learn to be intentful with the type of sounds that we're using. Quick note before we head into actually sound designing. When it comes to animations, you're faced with a bit of a dilemma. See, you're just working with imaginary things. What does a green circle bouncing sound like? What does a bunch of dots moving around the screen sound like? You have to decide what character you want to give those animations. And what I mean by that is decide on the direction you want to take it. Is the animation more light and cartoony, or is it more deep and heavy? It's super important to keep the sounds consistent in a piece, otherwise it'll very quickly feel clunky and weird. Another thing is to find elements in the real world that have the same characteristics as your animation. It could be a line animating across the screen that kind of reminds you of a pencil going across a piece of paper. Use that to your advantage because the viewer, whoever watches it, will already have that connection established a lot easier than if you were to use some wacky sound that doesn't really seem to fit. So experiment with a bunch of different sounds, decide on a direction, and see if you can use elements from the real world to aid your animation in feeling more grounded. Now we have a couple of main categories of sounds that we know to look out for. And with that being said, we can finally hop into Davinci Resolve with our trusty headset on and start actually sound designing. So this is pretty much just starting from the beginning, and then we're just gonna go through the whole process. First clip, pretty simple. I know I want some movement sounds. I want a nice little whoosh to start in the beginning. And obviously I'm gonna use Artless, so we're gonna head over to the sound effects tab, which is where all the magic is gonna happen. And luckily it's pretty easy. I'm just gonna search for whoosh. And I know I want it to feel kind of natural and kind of airy, so I could even add something like an airy description in there as well to just narrow it down just a little bit more. And then it's really just about playing it back until we find something we like. This sound is super nice. It has a good bit of depth, which I really enjoy in my whooshes. I don't like when they're too high pitched, so I typically try to go for something that is a bit lower pitched, but then I'll just take it from my downloads folder and drag it straight into Davinci Resolve. Now, a good tip is, after you've done a lot of sound designing, you'll have a lot of sounds built up. And in that instance, it's super neat to use the sound library feature of Davinci Resolve. And essentially what this allows you to do is access all sounds you have within Davinci Resolve, so you don't have to drag it from the downloads folder. So it just makes it a little bit easier. And what I've done is, I'm not super organized, so I've just linked it to my downloads folder. So you can see local database, which is just my downloads folder. And then I could search for something in here like a whoosh. And then I have all the whooshes that I have in my downloads folder. So it just makes it a little bit easier. And you see, there's a couple of instances where I have the same sound twice because, again, I'm not super organized. But hey, at least, I know I'm not going to miss it. But once I have my sound in here, I'll typically play back and just listen to it once again. So I know I want it to come in pretty quick in the process because I want it to be for this specific movement of panning down. So what I could do is even trim it down just a little bit, and I just have my trim at the beginning of the clip set to Q hotkey and trimming the end to W, which is just makes it a lot easier when you're cutting through clips. And then just play again, and then I'll listen to how it sounds with the clip. I don't care so much about the exact frame where movement happens, just because sometimes it can feel a bit unnatural. So the main key here is to make sure it feels good and sounds good, and not necessarily that the keyframe for an animation, for example, or the exact point a movement starts lines up exactly where the sound is. So base it off of feel instead of the exact moment. So that right there sounds pretty good, and you can see the peak of the movement is almost towards the end, but when you put them together, it actually sounds pretty good. It's a little bit too loud still, so what I typically do is I just use this little line here that you can kind of see where I get the two little arrows, and then you can just move that up to turn up or down, and I'll play around with that a little bit. And that sounds pretty good. And again, with the detail sounds, like I mentioned earlier, you want to keep it pretty minimal and natural. You don't want it to become too overpowering and not too much of it either. So I think this is a pretty good start for the beginning. And then we have a little call here with a little bit of movement. And for this transition, I might want to do something pretty simple. So just maybe like a click or something to signify the transition. And again, this is one of those movement sounds where you just kind of make stuff up. So let's do maybe a click, and I know I have one click, which is this vintage sound, which is incredible. Again, this is all from Artless. All these sounds put in here are pretty much from Artless. So I'm just gonna drag this in because I know I have this specific sound that I love to use, and that's why it's good to have this database with everything in it. And again, something like my most used sound effects, link in the description, pretty good deal. But playing that back, we just have, and it starts, hey, you can see most of the sound is right at the cut, but the sound actually starts a little bit before. So I might just want to move this up a little bit, just ever so slightly, so that when I play it back, it sounds actually good. Like that. And here we have this super crazy low shutter type of shot. And I feel like we could do a pretty nice whoosh for this, but maybe something a little bit more, almost more like a riser maybe. So I'll just search for a riser just so we get a little bit of like momentum building up, and then it goes to a pretty still shot. So that'll be the goal here. And you might be able to notice I've left the original audio in for all the clips because it's just such a nice base to have when you are sound designing. It helps to have some realistic sound in there. You can never go wrong with sound you've actually recorded unless it's absolutely useless. Like in this shot, it's just music, so I could really just take it down, but there is just a little bit of that atmospheric sound of driving in the road that you still get. And it also helps a lot when you are adding sounds to it so that you know, okay, when should I place the sounds? But okay, let's get back to finding our riser here. Sometimes a good keyword I like to put in is cinematic. It just feels, well, I guess more cinematic. And sometimes it's just a little bit nicer of like a, it makes you feel like it's more of a movie type of thing, because some of them are pretty wacky. Again here, the main thing I'm trying to keep in mind as I'm browsing through the sounds is making sure that the world that I'm creating with the sounds are similar. So like the one we just listened to, it's way too high pitched compared to the other sounds we have, so it's just not gonna work. So I'm looking for something that has a little bit more, I don't know if it's necessarily bass, but depth to it. Don't like the impact in that one. So like this one I've used before, but I don't want this exact one. It has just a little bit of like a ringing in it. So I'll use the similar sounds feature and hopefully we get something that's pretty close to it without just that ringing. Just not quite. Let's try and remove the cinematic and then maybe do like an epic or something. This could maybe go somewhere. Nope. Not quite. Absolutely not. Ooh. Kind of intrigued by this one. I like this one. Maybe I'll go to this guy's stuff and see if I can find something that is pretty in there. So I'll go to this collection, which is where the sound is from, and just listen to a few of them, see if we can find something that just feels right. And that's what a lot of the process is like. It's just about listening to a bunch of sounds until you find something. And that's why I love using the artboards feature and the sound library tab in Davinci Resolve, because eventually, as I said, you get to a point where you just have a lot of really good sounds that you can mix and match from. That's a nice whoosh. Ooh. Man, this pack is great. Ooh. Oh, I love that one. I'm getting that one because we're using that for sure. Okay, so back to off the Davinci Resolve. Let's drag the sound in and put it right here. And now let's put this, let's right about here maybe. We'll try it out, see what it sounds like. So maybe a little bit more this way. And it has a little bit of panning to it. Now, if you don't like the panning, which is where it goes from left to right, you can always go into your audio track and you can change it to a mono track, for example. So change track to mono, and then it will just be in one channel. So it'll play both sounds in both ears at the same time. I don't know if you can, I don't know, if you're wearing headphones and watching this video, you'll probably be able to tell. If not, you probably won't be able to tell. You can also go into the attributes of the clip and then change the audio to a mono, so you can change it per audio instead of like per sound instead of for the whole track. Might take this and just decrease the semitones just a couple of bits just to make it a little bit deeper. Move it maybe up just a little bit. I like that, but we still need just a little bit that builds up. So I'm gonna go back in here and we're just gonna go back to riser and see if we can find something else, and then maybe play around a little bit with the transitions. Maybe have something that's a bit long, like a long whoosh, for example. That might work pretty good. This wouldn't be bad if it was just a little bit. Now we're talking. I quite like this one, so let's try it out. I always download the WAV form of it, just because that I think it's the highest quality one. But so this one is super long, and we don't need it to be this long because I essentially want it to end right there. So I'm just gonna trim this up just using my mouse, and we'll place that right at the end here. So line up the end of this clip with the beginning of it, and sometimes it moves in increments of like 1 frame. So you can turn off the magnet here, and then you can move it around with a lot more control. So just another good tip is sometimes turning that off. But then I'll open this back up, and it's incredibly long for what we need. I mean, it goes even beyond anything we need. So I might just take it right here, and then I'm just gonna trim it up, and then I'll add this little, if you zoom in here, and if you hold close to one of the corners, you'll see this little bookmark tab almost, I don't know, like a mark almost, but you can click and drag this to essentially ease it in and out. So it basically goes from no audio to full audio. And then there's this little dot in the middle, which is where you can control the easing of it. So do you want it to basically start out pretty slow and then gradually go up? Or do you want it to start with a little more oomph and then slowly get up to full speed? So it's kind of a, think of it as like a graph in After Effects pretty much. It's the same thing. So you can drag this out a little bit and get exactly the type of easing you kind of want. You can play around with it pretty good. And then we might just tone it down just a little bit more here. Maybe even drag this out a little bit more, make it a little bit more gradual. And turn it down just a little bit more. And then obviously we build momentum up, so now we have to get it to come back down. And that's where impacts are a great sound as well. And we just want something, again, kind of airy almost, so I'll just search for an airy impact here, which I think could work pretty good. I know this guy has some incredible downers or impacts or whatever you want to call them. So let's maybe see what he has in here, because I know he's got some good stuff. Let's go to this first collection, see what he's got. That's mean. That one's incredible. I don't know if it really fits what the style that we're going for, but that is a beautiful sound. I mean, the depth in that thing is insane. Let's go to this one. These may be a little bit too scary sounding. Let's go back here and then do maybe an impact sound. No, you know what? Let's go into the transitions and let's do a downer here and see what they kind of got. Maybe can I add a long whoosh to this and see? Not really. Maybe a long whoosh? A long impact? It's insane how many sounds they have. Oh, that was almost so good. Holy smokes. Just a little bit too sci-fi. Maybe this one. What is this gonna be? That's kind of cool. see if we can do... Interesting. Nope, not quite. Too pitchy. So you know what? Let's go to all the studios real quick because I know they have so much stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see all the collections. Dollar bills, cinematic Warzone, analog transitions, experimental ones. Let's listen to some balanced transitions. That might be a pretty good one. Oh yeah. See, that's the good thing about a downer or an impact is that essentially you can just take a sound and reverse it. And that, I think, is going to work pretty well. Also, can we talk about artists making their own sounds as well to contribute to this? Incredible. But let's drag that bad boy in here, and then I'm just going to go into my little audio tab, and then go into speed change, and then boom, reverse it, and we can just trim this up to start right there, and decrease the volume just a little bit. Drag this out just to get a nice gradual ease into this, and let's play this back. Decrease the semitones a little bit of this. Sounds too cymbally in reverse. Let's see if we can play with this a little bit. Might need a sound that doesn't have quite that much high pitch at the end. Ooh, this might be able to work pretty good. So in the end, kind of more of a whoosh than anything else, but decrease the semitones a little bit, just make it a little bit deeper. And then maybe stack it with something else. Like that one impact we saw, what's his name? Alex Cummings. Search for that. And go into his profile here, Extreme Force Volume 1. And this one, download that bad boy. Yes, please. And go in here and drop that in here, right. Line it up so it is perfectly, boom, at least somewhat, and we can move this sound up a little bit. Stay just a little bit organized, and then tone it down a whole bunch more, so it's just ever so subtly there. Not a fan. You know what might work pretty good? Rubble. A rubble sound, like rocks. Let's try adding this one in there, just for a little bit of like texture, almost, I guess you can kind of call it. Throw that in there. And then I want to change this to I'll just change this to an auto track so we have one. What does that sound like? A little deeper. Okay, so now so far, couple clips in, we have this. And then I want to do like a shoelace thing right here because I feel like that would make a lot of sense. So let's just do tying shoelace. Let's see what we got. I think this one might. I like how deep sounding it is. So let's try this one. Let's download that bad boy and throw that in here, and then we just gotta find. Boom. So where he ties those shoelaces, and then we just gotta tie it. So right here is when I start pulling, sorta. So I'm just gonna drag that in here. Oh yeah, that's perfect. And let's just move that up a little bit. Oh yeah, and then just tone it down just a little bit here. That adds so much to it as well, just that little bit of depth. Then we have some running here, and we don't really have much of anything else going on here. I don't know if I want to do like an actual transition sound for this, so maybe just have some footsteps running. So let's do running and then enter, and then I'm gonna add gravel as a second key roll. Let's see if we can get something specific like that instead of, because we don't want asphalt or anything because I am running on gravel, so we want it to make sense for the viewer as well. So and then what I like to do here is just sort of line it up with the steps. So right there, let's say I'm landing roughly there. And then what you can do is, I can have this one is only coming out of one left there. So I'm just gonna change this to a mono track as well. Just change track type to mono. And then I just cut it up, and then right as we land, I want the second one to come in. So maybe move that up just a little bit. And maybe even have one, we can just take, let's just cut this up real quick and move this over to right at the beginning so we get a little bit of like that sound, which will almost serve like a transition sound. Move that over just a little bit of the residual. And then I gotta cut this out because that is, so we only have two really, kind of this one. So we can maybe cut this out here. And let's just take these sounds and decrease the volume a little bit so they're very subtle, and maybe drop the pitch just a little bit to have them just be a little bit deeper. Perfect. And then for this one, I definitely know that I want some type of whoosh that we are gonna find here. Whoosh, and then maybe dirt in there as well to kind of give some of that texture from the ground of running. Oh, that's a pretty nice one. Oh yeah, let's try this one. That might be a banger, and it's a twofer, 2-in-1. Can't go wrong with that. It's a pretty nice whoosh too. Okay, one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. So right here, we'll just line it up right about there. Boom. Get a nice little bit of, and maybe have the other one. So I'll just trim that up, and let's just move that down, and then we know this next one is gonna come right. Boom, so a little back to back. Move that up just a little bit. And this is where having the original sound really comes into play, because I can just turn this up just a little bit and get that audio from right in there. And I might even want to just take some dirt sound maybe. maybe sand is a more appropriate, just to add a little bit of like grittiness. There we go. Exactly what I was looking for. So take that and let's put that into our timeline here, just for this little bit here. And I'll just trim this up a little bit so we just get boom and cut that right there. Just a nice little bit of texture. You barely notice it, but it's there. And then for this one, we don't have much going on, but I do want just a little bit of like breathing sounds. So let's do out of breath maybe. See if that will yield some good results. I have this one already, which is pretty good, but maybe just a little bit too. These are a little bit freaky, but that's what it sounds like. I mean, it's not my fault. Anyways, this one is pretty good. So this is definitely freaky hours. What in the world? Okay, change this track type to mono, blah blah blah. Then maybe trim that fast one. It's just a little. I think that's pretty good. And then just decrease the audio just a little bit here, and maybe fade it in just a little bit here and fade it out just a little bit there. Drag these down a little bit like such. Maybe even extend this out just a little bit like that. That is pretty sweet. And again, we can increase this just a little bit so we get some of those footsteps in there. That's great. Okay, so now we have another transition, and this one, since it's a tree, maybe we can do some leaves, like a leaf sound of transition. Maybe add a whoosh in there. See if we can get something. Ooh. I actually really like the first bit of it, so maybe take that. Maybe layer it with some of this. And if we need to, we can even add that one as well to get a little bit more of that leaves texture in there. So drag this in here. And let's move that up down to this one. Move it over a little bit. Oh yeah, that is sweet. And I'll just trim that right there where that first one stops. Tone it down a little bit. And then take that second sound in here as well. And we will just trim this up because I don't want the second bit of it. And drag this down here to another mono. Turn it down a little bit. Maybe move this up a little bit. Turn the volume of this clip up to get that footstep. That's pretty neat. I think that's all we need for those two clips right there because they flow so good together with that little beautiful. Okay, so now we have me and my my lovely wife sitting on our porch listening to some nature sounds. So I'm not gonna put that in yet, but I do want some rocking of that chair just for now, and then we'll add some overall nature sounds later. Rocking chair maybe. See what that sounds like. Don't want it to be, ooh. quite that. That might work, just a little bit of creaking. I don't want it to be too creaky, but just a little bit. Ooh, that might be pretty good. Take that as well. What in the world? Man, they have so many sounds. It's almost too much. Okay, so let's take this one and move this up right here. Cut it, boom, and turn it down a little bit. Now, I'm leaving a little bit of a trail just because I like the build-up, so it kind of eases it in a little bit. So it doesn't become too start and stop, which I do like in some instances, just because it can add a little bit to that, almost, I don't know if staccato is the right word, but a little bit of which is nice in certain instances. Oh yeah. Can I move this down to a mono track here? Oh yeah, I think that's absolutely perfect. Then we have another tree shot in here, this time going the other way. And let's see if maybe we can find something not quite as tree, but a nice swoosh for sure. Definitely want that in there. And maybe, what could be some interesting... So I don't want it to be too... Maybe a wind, some like the wind is blowing type thing. Off to a pretty good start. Ooh. That's pretty nice too. I like this one. I like this one a lot. Let's download this one and see how that looks with our clip itself. Boom. And then we'll just have it start just a little bit. Boom. Maybe move it up just a tiny bit. Can we pitch this down just a couple of semitones? Oh yeah. And then I'm gonna trim it up and I'm just gonna have it drop out pretty quick, quicker than it is right now, which is where this little tab comes into play pretty good. And just drop it like that. Boom. Because I want this shot in particular to be very like peaceful. We're gonna add a little bit of like wind and leaves rustling to it, but I want it to be a peaceful shot, so I don't want the transition to go too far into it. And this transition is so quick. Maybe we need something that's a little bit, I want something with texture in it. I'm gonna try my rubble again. I'm gonna try it. Maybe rocks. And let's play this back. I love those. I wonder if we can get something a little quicker though. That might work. No. Oh, this. I think this will work. And I know there's not actually any rocks in this image, but just for that little bit of texture, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's still earthy, you know, it's nature, so it should maybe just do the trick here, and we'll just place that right about there, and then, oh yeah. Listen to that texture in there, my goodness, it's beautiful. I don't know if you can tell, but I really love sounds with texture. Now we have this little reeling shot, so that should be fishing pole reel. Ooh. Ooh. What do I like the best? fast. How much this? A good bit. This one might work pretty good because it has a little bit of like, it dips a little bit. So let's try this one. And then I actually want to do just a fishing pole. And then see if we can get like a pole. Maybe I should add pole in there. We'll see. Anyways, let's add this retching sound in there, and we'll put it right at the beginning here. Boom. And then we'll just gotta... So it stops reeling right about there. Maybe decrease the volume of that just a little bit. And then fade it out a little bit there, because she slows down. Oh yeah. And then maybe we can just do a nice little whoosh here. So let's go back to our whoosh. Actually, I know exactly. ARYEH Studios. Get me straight back in there. And I want to do organic motion. See if we can find something. This might be pretty good. Maybe this. This may be a little bit. Maybe this works pretty good. The other one is a bit too clothy. Ooh. Okay, let's try this first sound and see if we need to layer it a little bit to get the right sound we're going for. So, boom, right here. Turn it down a little bit. And this is what I said. You see the movement starts right here, but the sound doesn't quite. So we're just going to move that up a little bit here. Oh yeah, that's way better. So we got that, but I do think it needs a little oomph. So let's try adding this one in there maybe. So download that one. And let's stack him. And boom. See what that sounds like. Oh yeah, that's better. Has just a little bit more depth. And we have another dirt shot, which you know exactly what that means. We need some rubble. We need some rocks, actually. Rocks. Let's do. Let me hear a couple of different variations of this. Let's try it. I love it. I want to try it. This one is also so nice. Oh my, I'm gonna have to download it just for later. Let's try this one here. Oops. Put that in. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, so again, I want to trim this up a little bit, start it right about here, and then end it right there, fade that out, maybe move this over a little bit so it goes just a little bit, you know, closer to where the motion is actually happening, like that, and then just turn it down a little bit. I do think maybe this is just a little bit too loud for what it is. So I want to tone it down. Oh yeah, that's nice. This shot, I'm not doing anything yet. And then we have a little tree Shot here, boom. And maybe we can do something a little magical with this. Maybe we can do a nice airy whoosh. So let's do a whoosh here. Can I do deep maybe? Would that get me the right? Yeah. I want something kind of like this, man. Nice. I've already got all of these. Maybe this will have some good. That could be good. Ooh, I kind of like the whistling because it kind of sounds almost like birds chirping, which is going to be perfect for what we're going to do with this later anyways when I add the atmosphere at the very end. But let's take this one and then Oh yeah, perfect. No, accidentally placed it perfectly. Let's see if we can move this up a little bit though so we stay organized. Turn it up a little bit more. Move it up just a little tiny bit. And then this shot, I don't really want to do anything. I just want this to be kind of the end because of the voiceover I'm going to do in the actual video itself. Anyways, but now we have all the pieces in place. I'm just going to trim this up and I'm going to just enable my magnet so I can end it right there. Now let's play it back with just the movement / detail sounds in there. Perfect. Okay, so the last step of my sound design process is adding the atmosphere sound, which is what really grounds the pieces I've mentioned before. It's the very first layer of the layer cake, as I called it, because it does, to me, have almost the most importance. So basically, we just want to see what these scenes sound like and then find a sound. So this is like a parking lot. So we could just go into alt list, and if we type in parking lot, we should find something. Perfectly. Sounds like a parking lot to me. So we're going to take that sound, and this is also where having the original audio can help, especially if you record it well, just because then you don't necessarily have to go out and find something to have that sound. But I'm going to zoom in here, and then I'm just going to boom, cut that up, drag the volume down a little bit. And then here, I have some pretty good audio already from the recording I did, but I might want to just get a car passing just to emphasize it just a little bit more. So I like this one a lot, so I'm just going to get this one and add this bad boy in here. And could you argue this is almost like a transition sound? Maybe. But let's start this right here. And then we're just going to empty that up right here. Well, not empty, but cut it. And tone it down just a little bit here. This is shot from the inside of a car, but it doesn't necessarily look like a car. So I don't know that we necessarily need anything specific, but I do like adding just a little bit of like ambiance to it. So we can just do driving and then maybe get like the sound of like asphalt crackling or something like that. Like this. So maybe if we can find something that sounds similar to this so we don't reuse the same sounds over and over. Will be perfect. Just a little bit of that crackle that we all recognize from driving on the roads. Let's solo this. trying to find a good spot here. It's also only in one ear, so I'm going to change the track type to mono here and just move this up. And of course solo the right track, that'd be great. I like that little bit of texture in there, so I'm going to steal that bit and let's place this in the right spot here, boom. And let's just trim it up just a little more so we actually get some of that texture in there. Boom. And cut that up. And that sounds pretty good. Now this, we're gonna have a lot of outside sounds. So a lot of this is gonna be similar. And I'm just gonna find some nature and then maybe do rural, because it is kind of rural so we don't get too many of like cars and stuff like that. Maybe not as many insects. And this one is a good one. I love using this one. Oh, this one is nice. I'll take this one. That is phenomenal. Boom. And then we can take this download and drag it in here. Now, the good thing about these is they're typically very, very long. So what I like to do is for these type of clips where I want it to kind of feel like I'm switching scene, I'll just cut up in one place and then drag it out a little bit and then put it back in so that it kind of sounds like it's switching locations a little bit. Obviously this is a bit hard to hear with how quiet it is, but you can kind of tell it doesn't sound quite the same, which is exactly what I'm going for. Again, move this out. And that's why I was talking about earlier, that little bit of staccato feeling where we are clearly switching locations. And although they are still outside, I want it to sound different to signify that switching of locations. But we can do that a bunch of different times, blah, blah, blah. We get the point. And now I want to add just to some of these, like some of these scenes, maybe a little bit of like wind, like in this instance here, these couple scenes where we can see the wind is very clearly blowing. So we'll just add some ambiance here. We'll do ambiance and then we'll do wind. This is pretty good. I know I'm not in the desert, but the wind sound is nice. So let's take this and place it below here. And let's go right to the beginning here. Boom, trim that up. And maybe right here, just make it a little bit different. And cut that up. Actually, I just want to trim it here. And then over here, introduce the wind again. And then obviously end that right at the end, boom. We want these two to end right there. And then just decrease the volume of these just a little bit here. With this one, so we can do all of them at the same time. And in this instance, I'm not too worried about fading the sound in. Obviously you can depending on the type of video you want to do, but I like the hard cuts for some of these to signify, or like really signify the change in scenery. And especially if you have whooshes in there, like in this instance, right there, it kind of covers that hard cut as well, so you don't necessarily have to do it for everyone. Right here, I might want to extend it just a little bit and just fade it in ever so slightly, maybe ease it just a little bit here. Perfect. And then we have, I still just think these are just a little bit too loud. Maybe decrease them just a little bit here. This frog one, obviously we need some insects. So I'm gonna go hard on the insect one here because we're so close. It's macro perspective, and typically if you're really close to something, it's a lot louder than what you would just hear naturally. Maybe we can add frog here as well in the title. Ooh. I like this one. So I'm gonna download this one and let's plop this into our timeline here. Boom, right at the beginning of our clip here. Cut that up like such. Have that be pretty loud in here. And maybe for this one, we'll go in and we'll just add a little bit more on each end. And then we will ease that in just a little bit here. Like such, and the same thing over here, but the other way around. Perfect. And now if we play this back, the very, very final thing, we're pretty much done with sound designing. Now we just gotta listen back and make sure that it all sounds pretty freaking good. That's how I sound design. With that being said, I just want to say again, thank you to ARYEH for sponsoring this video. I use them for literally everything. They are absolutely phenomenal. You can use my link down below to get 2 months for free when you sign up for the annual subscription. I highly recommend it for you and for the sake of your clients who you're working with as well. Outside of that, patreon.com/Mapal to get access to the project file. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Hopefully I redeemed myself from the previous sound design video where I didn't show this whole process of listening to sounds over and over again. And yeah, hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you feel inspired to go out and sound design something on your own. And I'll see you again next time. Peace out.